Hi, my name is Leanne. I'm a librarian and I love stories. Some of my favorite stories are fairy tales. I've loved fairy tales since I was a little girl, but sometimes you hear a story over and over again, you wish it could be new and exciting like it was the first time you heard it. One way that fairy tales can become new and exciting again is if the author changes something about them to make them just a little bit different. The stories I have for you today are based on fairy tales, but they are multicultural fairy tales. And what that means is that they may come from a different culture than what you're used to seeing, which does definitely change things. Our first story is Cinderella. Do you remember hearing the story of Cinderella? Maybe someone read you the story when you were small, or perhaps you saw the movie with the adorable mice and the bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. So you may remember that Cinderella is a beautiful young woman who lives with her evil stepmother and stepsisters. They try to keep her from going to a royal ball, but with some help from her fairy godmother, Cinderella goes to the ball, meets the prince, and eventually they live happily ever after. The book I'm going to show you today is called The Rough-Faced Girl by Rafe Martin. It's a Cinderella story, but it has some serious differences from the original story. Well, for one thing, this Cinderella story doesn't have a palace. It's set in an Algonquin village. The Algonquin were a Native American tribe from Canada, so this version of the Cinderella story is already pretty different, isn't it? In the Cinderella story is beautiful, but if you look at the cover of the book, she's hiding her face. The rough-faced girl has two sisters. Not stepsisters, but they are very wicked and cruel, and they make her tend the fire all day. She becomes burnt and scarred, and her sisters tell her that she is ugly. Now, in this village lives an invisible being. He's supposed to be very powerful and very handsome. Here's his wigwam. It's the biggest one in the village. But the only one who can marry him is the one who can see him. The wicked stepsisters decide that they want to marry this man, so they dress in their very finest clothes and head for the wigwam of the invisible being. But here they encounter the invisible being's sister, who will not let the girls into the wigwam. She tells them that if they have seen the invisible being, they must tell her, "What's his bow made of?" The girls cannot answer. She then asks, "What's the runner of his sled made of?" And again, they can't answer. So she takes them into the wigwam and lets them sit there all night. But all they can see is his bow moving, and all they can hear is breathing. Nothing else. There's nothing left for the rough-faced girl to make her beautiful clothes out of. So she puts together an outfit of her best birch bark dress, dried reeds, and broken shells, and makes her way to the wigwam of the invisible being. All the people come out to laugh and make fun of her, but she does not cry or turn back. She just keeps walking to the wigwam of the invisible being. What do you think will happen to the rough-faced girl? Will she be able to see the mysterious invisible being? Or will she have to go back and tend the fire for her cruel sisters? You'll have to read the story to find out. So, do you know the name of the state you live in? If you said North Carolina, you were correct. Many people who live in North Carolina like to travel to Myrtle Beach for vacation. Now, do you know what state Myrtle Beach is in? South Carolina, which is right next to North Carolina. Our next story is a retelling of The Princess and the Pea. In this story, the prince wants to make sure that the girl he's going to marry is a real princess, so he puts a pea under her mattress to test her. And the idea is that a princess is so very sensitive that even a small pea under her mattress would make sleeping just unbearable. Now, I have to confess, I always thought this story was ridiculous. Aren't mattresses a bit thick to feel a pea through? And wouldn't the pea get squished? But I found a version of the story that I like, and it's set in South Carolina during the 1950s, at a time when African Americans were fighting for their civil rights. The Princess and the Peas by Rachel Himes is set in Charleston County, South Carolina, home to Ma Sally and her son John. Ma Sally is the best cook in the county, and she's particularly known for her black-eyed peas. Ma Sally's son John is just the nicest guy, and all the women in the town adore him and like to cook food for him, hoping to win his heart. Ma Sally is disappointed in all of them because apparently none of them can cook well enough to meet her high standards. So when John says he wants to get married, Ma Sally lets it be known that she is having a contest to pick the best lady for John. She is overheard by several ladies who show up at her place on a Sunday evening. Harriet, Hannah, and Hattie vie for the favor of John, and Ma Sally tells them they have to cook a dish of black-eyed peas. Well, the contest is a disaster. Ma Sally shakes her head and tells them, "I'm sorry, ladies. I'm afraid not a one of y'all is fit for my son." Just then, there's a knock at the door. princess, a new girl in town who's fresh out of college, is here to cook the peas. The other women are clearly not impressed with her or her strange name. Ma Sally says, if you're so special, prove it. Cook them peas. And you'll have to read the rest of the book to find out if Princess is successful, but I will tell you this. John has to wash the dishes. So our Cinderella story was from Canada, and our Princess and the Pea story came from the United States, but our Little Red Riding story is coming from China. The name of this book is Lon Po Po by Ed Young. I've always loved the story of Little Red Riding Hood. It is so wonderful and creepy with the wolf, although I'm not always fond of the holy grandma thing. In this story, there is not one Little Red Riding Hood. There are three. Shang, Dao, and Pouch are three little girls who live in the country with their mother. One day she goes to visit their grandma on her birthday and tells the girls to close the door at sunset and latch it well. They do, but a cunning wolf disguises himself as an old woman and knocks on the door. He tells the girls that he is their grandmother and they let him in. The girls call the wolf Po Po, which is Chinese for grandmother. The wolf blows out the candle as soon as he gets in the room and hugs them all. Then he pretends to be sleepy and then urges everyone to go to bed. The girls begin to notice that their grandma is kind of weird. It really took them that long. Shang realizes that grandma has bushy feet and sharp hands. Shang lights the candle and gets a brief look at the wolf's face. She realizes that she and her sisters are in trouble. The clever girl thinks quickly and offers the wolf ginkgo nuts, promising him that the nuts are tender like the skin of a baby, and that they will let him live forever. The girls promise to pick some for their grandmother. When Shang gets her sisters outside, she tells them what's happening. They all climb the ginkgo tree to wait. The wolf comes out to see what is taking so long, and then Shang tells the wolf he must pick the nuts for himself. So will Shang's plan to save them all work, or will the wolf have ginkgo and girl to eat? If you want to know more, read Lon Po Po by Ed Young. On a side note, the name Lon Po Po means wolf grandmother. I think we can all agree that this is not the kind of grandmother any of us want to have. If you would like to read more multicultural fairy tales and enjoy the happily ever after, check out these titles at your local library or your school library. Thank you for joining me.